Welcome, everyone. We've been in executive session and we're back out now into open meeting. And just a reminder that due to Governor Baker's provisions and orders, this is a Zoom meeting. How to attend either by video or audio is on the town website. Reminding everyone the meeting is being recorded, but the recording is not to be considered an official document. It is 6 o'clock. We started at 5:45. Our goal is to complete this meeting in 2 hours or less because more than one of us tends to get tired at 7:45 at night. So we prefer to be fresh with the momentous decisions before us. We are momentarily going to jump into meeting the representatives from PAYS, but just a little bit about meeting ground rules to begin. Pre-COVID, we used to always start the meeting, or particularly I used to start the meeting with certain ground rules, and we talk about civility and transparency and decorum and time sensitivity and all those things. Since we've been on Zoom and we've been dealing with COVID, we've kind of let that slide, but I'd like to reinstitute that. I won't go on too very long, but a quick story. Over 60 years ago, I used to attend Camp Daniel Webster Day Camp in Marshfield. You have to be old to remember this. The days always started with a whole camp assembly with the usual announcement about events, programs, schedule, the like. Also included was an inspirational reading by the camp director, Mr. Cody, and that always ended with, some message about courage or perseverance or honesty or whatever that day. But what came out of it is a password, and you had to remember the password to get your lunch. So I bring this all up because a couple of weeks ago, I was on hold very early in the morning with WATD, the radio station, for an interview I do periodically. And the word comity came up, not comedy, but comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y. Kind of an old-fashioned word, hadn't heard it in a really long time, seems to mean something about courtesy, considerate behavior for others, often used government, political leaders or the like, but particularly not having heard it for a long time, it kind of appealed to me. Particularly appealed to me as kind of the underlying basis of a lot of how we aspire for things to go on. And comedy is greatly helped by having a clear understanding of the rules, of the guidelines, of the customs that we use, and a little bit more on that in just a little bit. So all that's a long-winded way of saying tonight the password is comity. It won't get you a lunch, but maybe, just maybe, it'll make one or more of us sleep a little more restfully tonight. So there you have it. All right, so first agenda item is representative from PAYS, and I assume that's you, Lily?
That is me.
Fantastic. We welcome you. First of all, an apology. I think maybe there was some confusion at the last meeting and what you guys were going to be on or not. I apologize profusely if there was confusion there. We're thrilled to have you tonight. This is part of a relatively new segment for the Board of Selectmen where we invite representatives of various groups or chairs of departments or commissions or committees. Really, it's meant to be like 10 minutes when we can get together, a chance to hear what's on your mind or what's going on with your organization, and really just a chance to get to know each other. So we're totally thrilled you're here, and we welcome any comments or updates that you'd like to share with us.
Great. Well, hi, I'm Lily Kruger. I am the treasurer of Plympton Athletic Youth Sports. And I'm filling in for Amy Hempel, who is the president of Plympton Youth Sports. And yes, Amy asked me to fill in last time as well, but I was, at that point, I had to coach basketball at 7, so I had to leave. So that was where the confusion was, which is fine. And I'm happy to be here now. So thank you. So the updates are, we just wrapped our basketball season. We had 4 teams at the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade level combined. So we had 4th graders, 5th graders, and 6th graders combined on teams in order to make about 4 teams of 9 kids. And at the 2nd and 3rd grade level, we had 2 teams, and then we had a small clinic of kindergarten and 1st graders. So we were able to meet capacity limits in the Dennett gym and keep the gym ventilated during games and practices. And we got so much positive feedback from the parents about keeping the kids active through this difficult winter. And we all couldn't be more pleased with how it went. We didn't have any COVID incidents. And the school cooperated with us quite well. We had to help the school with storage. They were using half of the gym for storage to make room in the classroom for all the additional spacing. And we fundraised and got sponsors for storage units to move a lot of furniture that had been in the gym into storage units right outside the school. So on Friday, we moved everything back in, and now the school is back in session full time, and we're done using the gym. And from my perspective, all that went off very nicely. And now we're moving on to running a baseball and a soccer season in the spring. And we have great numbers for both, better numbers than last year for both sports. So we're doing pretty well and maintaining close contact with the Board of Health about group sizes and how many spectators we can have, and making marks on the sidelines so that no one's standing too close to each other. And it's been going well, and we're pleased, and really the kids just need to exercise. That's our biggest concern. So that's what we've been doing.
I've been watching your videos. Who does the videos of the kids playing basketball?
We have several volunteers. So sorry, if you ever see my name, my phone battery dies when I'm doing the video. So I tend to turn on and off, but there's always, we tend to have a volunteer videotaping the games. And they really
I think it's great.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah.
It's been really fun to watch the games this year. And I know at home, we figured out how to cast the game from a phone on Facebook onto our TV. So my older son was watching games on the TV. He could watch his own highlight reel.
You need to talk to your son.
Yeah. They do like it because then those games get saved on Facebook so the kids can then watch their own kind of highlights afterwards. It's been nice. And that was another step we took, so that because each player only had 1 spectator in the gym, so that way parents, grandparents could still watch the kids play if they have a Facebook account.
Well, it's working.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you guys have been watching, or you've been watching, John. That's nice.
I like,
Yeah. Thank you.
So you expect, with certain changes to deal with social distancing and the like, that your spring schedule is as it would normally be?
Yeah, well, we ran soccer in the fall, and we did rearrange soccer, but we expect soccer to be as normal for the spring. Each coach is equipped with extra masks and hand sanitizer. And for soccer, no one is touching the ball. It's all, the only person who touches the ball is a goalie now. There's no throw-ins, so we're limiting contact that way. And what we have done for soccer, and I think it'll happen for baseball too, is coaches all bought their kids 5-gallon buckets for their equipment. And then when a kid shows up at practice, you flip your bucket upside down so it's a seat, and we space those appropriately 3 feet apart for outdoors, so that if they're sitting down to drink water, they're on their bucket before they pull their mask down. So they're appropriately spaced. But other than that, we plan with the older kids to start playing against other towns again, where in the fall, we combined genders and made intramural groups. So a little team of first and second grade boys and girls were playing against. We made about 4 smaller teams and had them do small in-town play instead of traveling to other towns. But the plan is for the fall, for the spring, the upcoming season, we will be traveling to other towns to play.
I salute you. I'm amazed you've done as well as you've done, and God only knows, some being outside and some exercise and some vague sense of normalcy. You guys are doing great stuff. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. It really has been important for the kids. I have 2 boys, and they need to run. They need to play outside. So it's been very important to me, and that's what I've heard from a lot of other parents too. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Lily?
Well, just I would really echo what you said, Mark, and for a lot of the kids, this has been their only socialization with other kids. So thank you for doing that. Question, do you still have enough girls to do a softball team, or did we have to combine with Halifax?
I think my notes here say we have 1 softball team. So
Okay,
I think we
great.
have. Yeah.
All right, it's been up and down over the years.
Yeah, it has. And I think sometimes we pull a couple older girls from T-ball up so that we can make the team, but it usually works out great. And yeah, I forget what I was going to say. No, we usually, it has been on and off for a couple years, and it was a scrape this year, but I think we did get one together.
Great.
We are a little tiny town, and we run this town mostly with part-time staff and with a lot of volunteers, and you guys are an integral part of that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been nice to come and see your faces and put faces to names. So thank you.
Thanks for coming in, and so sorry again about last week.
Oh, no problem.
We got you in and out much sooner tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you very
basketball's
much.
over.
All right.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thanks, Lily.
Thank you. You too. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
So we have 3 appointments. First of all, and I'll make the motions. I make a motion that we appoint Christine Kelly as treasurer collector starting June 1st, 2021 and running for 3 years. That appointment will be pending a contract review by town council and final contract negotiations. Was that a second?
I'll second the motion.
I'm going to read lips from now on that. All right. Any discussion? All right. Roll call vote. Mrs. Joy.
Yes.
We're reading lips again. I can do that. Mr. Trainer.
Yes.
And Mr. Russo. Yes. All right. We are absolutely thrilled. Christine's been in that office for a while, and I think is quite capable of stepping into the very big shoes that'll be left by Colleen. That's cool. All right, next appointment is Brian Kling as Inspector of Animals. That appointment would be through April 30th of 2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes. All right. Third one, Dave Batchelder, and we're thrilled that Brian's staying on in that position. Next one is Dave Batchelder as appointment to the Board of Assessors. He will be an interim member through May 15th of 2021.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote, Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes, and we're thrilled to have David in another position in town government. So very good. That takes care of that. Next agenda item brings us to a potential town meeting article regarding the town clerk's position and consideration of an article that would change that position from elected to appointed. As I understand it, were we to move forward on this, it would consist of a vote of the Board of Selectmen to put this on the agenda and then a vote at town meeting. And then a year from now would be two options on how this could be completed. One would be a special legislation from the state, or the other would be for this to be on a local election ballot. That last piece we could decide on next year.
Yeah, Mark, the reason I'd asked for this was that, and I met with Tricia and talked to her about this last week, was my thinking was that this was job security for a qualified clerk if we moved from the elected to appointed, and that this would continue our goal of professionalization of this position, such as we've done with highway, treasurer, and the collector, and that we would have a job description, and this would eliminate the potential of an unqualified person filling the position through election. Also, I was concerned that the town population is too small to continue to fill such a specialized position with a qualified candidate through the electoral process. And then finally, the reasoning was that this change would happen over time. I was thinking that, Tricia would run the course of her 3-year term, which would give us plenty of time to secure the other votes, whichever way we decide to go, and also put a job description together that would give this position the autonomy that they need with the MGLs. So it's plenty of time to get this organized and do what's best for the town.
And I think I might just comment, I think equally the concern is the possibility of someone leaving this position and then having such a small pool for such a specialized skill in an election. I would like nothing more if this goes ahead, that in 3 years, the present town clerk is happy with her position and we're happy, and that we can appoint her for a decade or 2 or 3 along the way. And I think that ideally would be the goal. But this does feel like the next step in continuing our slow, steady professionalization of department heads. So I'm certainly in favor of it as well. So any other comments about this? And I momentarily, I'll make a motion that we do in fact put an article on the town meeting ballot to move from elected to appointed. Anyone else want to comment?
Well, I would like to hear from the current town clerk, obviously. I do agree that we want to move to professionalize all these positions. That's been a goal from the start, but I'd be very interested in hearing from Tricia.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. No, for the record, this is the first discussion from the Selectmen of Christine presenting this tonight, for the record. This is the first discussion the Selectmen have had regarding this issue.
Yes, I brought this forward, Tricia, and I asked Liz to put it on the agenda.
And this is the first discussion the Selectmen have had.
We've talked about professionalizing the departments over time, all of the departments. So yes, this is the first time we've specifically discussed this position.
Well, this position is also one of the major components of how our town government is set up. So I'm just asking if this is the first discussion, because that really lasted only 3 minutes or 2 minutes. So I'm just wondering.
Well, no, I think in the past we've had discussions about how to professionalize and structure town government. The town accountant was elected. You go down, the highway superintendent was elected, and it just became a problem, because if you look at the pool of people with the skill sets, I've been in town 50 years, and I can remember, say, the highway superintendent, it wasn't as big a deal because we didn't have all the municipality laws that now enter into it. Now, some 30, 40 years later from when I've been in town government, it's completely changed at what the state drives down. You can go into each department and you'll find that they expect more professionalism and they demand it. In the fire department, we had to buy an ambulance and get into the ambulance business because the state came in and said, you will do this. We don't care how small you are. So in that sense, we've been talking about professionalizing the town for, I would say, a good 10 years. And this is just one more stop on the way. I hope it makes us stronger in the sense that people can say, okay, we know that the people who are in place are educated, certified, and able to do the job. Because I think that's what we bring to this, is to say, we're kind of doing the scrubbing, if you will. Now, we know in your case, you've already done that. You got all the qualifications. But the next person behind you, if that was to happen, who knows? So that's where I'm coming from. So if you have a problem with that, speak up. I'd like to hear your.
Oh, no, I do know that we have 3 certified municipal clerks in our very little tiny town that we talked about, that are certified municipal clerks. So that's actually a pretty large pool of people. And so I don't see that there is a lack of people who are qualified to run for election for town clerk.
Oh, I see that. No, I see quite the opposite, that in fact, town clerk is kind of a specialized skill. The fact that you're a certified clerk, maybe as a treasurer or assistant treasurer or in the assessor's office, doesn't mean that you're automatically qualified to run for town clerk.
The change from elected to appointed specifically really gives the selectmen and the administration the power to put in a town clerk in place, which they already have. If there was an absence of the town clerk, if there wasn't a town clerk, the selectmen have the power to appoint a town clerk. So changing it from elected to appointed doesn't take away any of your permissions and duties and responsibilities to appoint a town clerk. It just takes away the vote from the residents to elect one. Correct?
Part of there are 2 other certifieds, as you said, but it takes 2 things to end up with a town clerk from town. People that have the skills or are certified and are willing to serve, and that's what narrows down the pool. Yeah.
And the salary and support and making it a desirable job also narrows down the pool of people who want to be a certified clerk and run for that position.
We struggle mightily with fiscal restraint and rewarding people and/or attracting attractive people. It's a big challenge. All right. Any more comments, discussion? Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion that we include an article at the annual town meeting to change the town's clerk position from elected to appointed.
I'll
Do I hear-
second. I'll second the motion.
One more chance for any more discussion or comment. Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes. Okay, well, this will be an ongoing process. We'll have the opportunity to debate at town meeting. We'll have the opportunity, if this article is successful, for the next step next year. So a bunch of steps along the way. Thank you, Tricia, for joining tonight. And thank you for I see a little bit of a smile there. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Next agenda item are the draft town meeting articles from the Board of Selectmen and/or the Town Properties Committee. My understanding, and I'll throw this to Liz in a moment, I think we have several placekeepers. There's still certainly more work to do on the one or more that would come from either the Board of Selectmen or the Town Properties Committee. There is one other one that has been proposed that I'd like my fellow selectmen and I to make a decision on. And that one's about hiring a hydrologist to take a look at the Rocky Harvest reporting to Department of Environmental Protection. And actually, before we get to that, just a reminder, the warrant closes, as I understand it, automatically on Friday. So this is essentially our last chance to include or to remove articles from the warrant. So having said that, Liz, do you have anything to add about the town meeting articles in general?
So the warrant closes the last Monday of the month. So a week
Monday.
That will happen. As far as articles go, I have a few here that the Town Properties Committee is going to be putting forward. As far as Board of Selectmen articles, we have a placeholder for what Mark just mentioned, which would be hydrologist analysis of the reporting and consequences of Rocky Harvest water withdrawal. And I believe that the estimate for that was around $7,000. Mark, feel free to correct me if I'm off base.
Yeah, I wrote it in as 7,000. I did check with a well-regarded local hydrologist who thought the amount would be $5,000 to $7,000. I naively, I originally included the words about reporting on the consequences of the water withdrawal. I was pretty quickly informed that fully evaluating the consequences of water withdrawal would be a six-figure hydrologist. So that this money would be pretty much exclusively for an evaluation of any information that was at DEP and what he could glean from that. And essentially, my understanding was the sense that it would be up to $7,000 and might be less.
Liz, could you read off the articles? Because I've talked with John Williamson and he said he had talked to you and
Sure. So there's, so for Board of Selectmen sponsored, there was the possibility of that one. And then also, we wanted to see about repurposing the article that was originally created for town administrator search and change the language on that so that it's just professional position searches. I believe there's $10,311 or something right around there left in there. So even if we didn't add any more money, just simply change the title on that one, I think that that would be worthwhile in case somebody vacated a professional position and you needed to do a search. The other articles, which would be Town Properties Committee sponsored, potential for a roof replacement article for the townhouse, estimated around 300,000, and that would be for the middle and rear portions of the roof. And then at a later date, they would be looking at if other funds, potentially CPA, could be used for the portion on the front or oldest part of the building. We also have one here for $7,500 that would cover roof assessments at both the library and the fire station. Amount to be determined for a design services article to look at our town center campus plan and taking that to the next level potentially. $5,500 for flagpole refurbishments, both at the town green and also at the Route 106 and Main Street. And then $15,000 for general consultant and preliminary design services for any projects related to town-owned buildings or grounds, so that there were some funds in place if you needed professional assistance, either with cost estimates or taking a project at least through the first step.
Okay. I'm going to vote that we go forward with these articles. I know they'll have to be scrubbed through the Finance Committee. I'm not sure where I stand on the hydrologist, and I think we'll wait and see what the money pops out between now and getting through the Finance Committee. I have a feeling that we're going to be some in a financial bind, but that's usually the way we start off the budgeting process anyways. I do feel a little uncomfortable leaving this 10,000, some portion of it in the original article, because it doesn't get spent. It was raised, and so we don't have the use of that. I would much rather see that money move over that we could use broader than just professional search. But I can talk about that at town meeting, et cetera. So that's where I'm standing. I'll be glad to vote to bring them forward, though.
Me too.
I will just say I'm totally okay on hydrologist. If it turns out we're really strapped or in trouble, I mean, that's would be really nice information, but it's a bit of a luxury. I mean, we need to do it at some point, and if by chance it looks like not this year, it's fine with me. So we will certainly have work to do on crafting amounts and language on several of these. Shall we take a vote, though, to include the articles mentioned on the warrant before it closes?
Sure.
All right, I make that motion. Do I hear a second?
That's to include those articles plus the article to convert the town clerk's position? Okay, I'll
Yep.
second the motion.
All right, any more discussion? Roll call, Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mrs. Joy,
Yes,
Mr. Russo, yes. Okay, very good. All right, so the next agenda item is entitled Update Board of Selectmen Member Protocols and Information Sharing Among Selectmen. So there are really two parts to this agenda item, and I'd like to take the lead on the first part, and then I'll yield the floor to Mr. Trainer, who requested the second half, the part on information sharing among selectmen. And I'm going to ask Liz to screen share a document that I've put together. So this document's called Meeting Agendas and Meeting Conduct. I want to emphasize this is a draft. I fully recognize my fellow selectmen are seeing it for the first time. I didn't want to share it ahead of time because I really wanted to lay the groundwork a little, and we can go over this a little bit. It may well be, we'll have some discussion tonight. It may well be my fellow selectmen will want further discussion before we actually voted at this at our next meeting. But I just wanted to get this stuff out here. essentially what this is my understanding of what essentially have been unwritten rules of conduct. And I wanted to get them written down. I wanted to get to general agreement on them because they sort of tell us how to do things. Really, in a lot of ways, this is my hope that this is the first step on a bigger project, which would be to write a complete Selectmen's Code of Conduct. This is something that's often described as useful and skillful, and particularly useful in encouraging kind of civility and especially avoiding misunderstandings and confrontation among selectmen and among their community. So it's a little bit of a long preamble. Essentially, these are 10 generally unwritten rules that essentially are my understanding of how we do things. We certainly can change them along the way, but I just wanted to briefly go down the 10 of them. So,
And Liz, can you raise it so we can see? I only can see 7.
yeah, we'll get the other. Yep, we'll lose the first one. Come back down a little. We'll get to 10. So it is understood that any selectman can request the addition of an item to the notice of meeting agenda. I'm going to actually read these. I know it's maybe not quite the best use of time, but in general, coming to general agreement, I think it is a good use of time. So number 2, generally a draft of the agenda is distributed to selectmen for comment before posting. 3, even after posting, an agenda item can potentially be changed or added by posting an amended agenda. Whenever possible, this should be a very rare occurrence. Number 4, it is the chair's prerogative concerning what order agenda items are addressed at a Board of Selectmen meeting. Number 5, the chair chooses the order in which to recognize speakers. Number 6, the chair will rule inappropriate comments out of order. Number 7, when necessary to maintain decorum during a Board of Selectmen meeting, the chair may call for a brief recess. Number 8, if an item is raised at a meeting that is not on the agenda, it is at the discretion of the chair whether a brief discussion may be considered. Whenever possible, other than unanticipated time-sensitive matters and emergencies, it is much preferred that discussion be delayed and action taken only after an item is listed on a future agenda. Number 9, open meeting law does not allow deliberation among a quorum of selectmen between meetings. This is not a guideline nor a local custom, rather it is a state law with significant penalties possible for violation. And number 10, information and items of note arising between Board of Selectmen meetings can be shared by a selectman by way of communication with the town administrator. Information and items of note to be shared by a selectman with a fellow selectman should be shared by requesting an agenda item be added for discussion at a posted Board of Selectmen meeting. So once again, these are the 10 that I've come up with. They're essentially operating principles, and we're welcome to have some discussion now, welcome to have further discussion next time. The goal is that we're all working on the same rules.
Mark,
So-
I've got a comment for you. I think that none of this is all MGL's open meeting law and Robert's Rules of Order, which I believe is just kind of you condensing what is already been in print, or as, I mean, some of this looks familiar from Copeland and Page about their open meeting law. So, I mean, this is all stuff that is out there that I'm glad you put it in writing, but yeah, I mean, this is, yeah.
Well, I'm going to take the opposite. I think this is, this will tamper down any discussion, open communication. And later on, the second part of this agenda is where I'll talk more about that. There is a Selectmen's Handbook that already talks about what the selectmen and the chair's responsibility are. And I agree with some of this, that the chair sets the agenda.
Mhm.
But I think when you get into where you have to say that the chair is going to be the arbitrator of when discussions are ended, that becomes a hindrance for the other select persons to continue to raise their issues. And quite frankly, I'm not sure, well, I know why this got here, and maybe we can talk about that. I tend to be probably a believer in John Lewis's Good Trouble. And the idea behind John Lewis was there are times when the law restricts things that are in fact causing the wrong position, the wrong type of action to be taken or not taken. When I ran for this selectman's job, I said I would be 100% for transparency and communications. And I believe that. I believe everything we discuss, however it's discussed, should be out to the public.
Mhm.
I've said in the past, I wouldn't care if we put all our emails out to the public. I have been guilty of probably the Massachusetts open meeting law, but I'm not the only one. So I don't feel I'm in bad company. It's just that I'm probably the most prolific. I did write a letter, a personal letter, to one of the selectmen. I didn't copy anybody else. And I said that I was having a problem, that I felt we weren't communicating the way we should be. One is we communicate between the selectmen to get issues solved. But the other part of this, and it's equally important, is we communicate what we're working on so the town feels good about what's being addressed. And that's where I feel like we tend to tamper down the discussions. There's also a fine line about what can go into executive meeting versus what's open meeting. We face that with the zoning. There are things in the zoning agent that I believe should absolutely be in executive meeting. Now, some of these we probably can get in because they result in negotiations, and that's okay under Massachusetts open meeting law. But that means there's other things that don't quite meet the requirements. And there's a tendency, wait a minute, we can't talk about that. We can't mention names. We can't mention addresses. And it gets very hard to discuss it because it's not just the significance of the individual zoning issue. It's the significance of, if there's going to be more of these types, what should we be doing to solve it? So I don't feel comfortable with this. I think I know what the Massachusetts open meeting law says. I've read the Massachusetts handbook. And really, I read it probably 6 years ago, but I read it again now because I knew this was going to be coming up. So I would like to have a lot more discussion on this before we go forward.
I'm totally glad to have a lot more discussion. To be clear, most of these come right out of the Selectmen's Handbook. A couple of weeks ago, the Massachusetts Selectmen Association had a webinar on civility in town government. The main theme, the almost exclusive thing that was put forth of the way to promote and foster civility is to have rules of conduct exactly like this. And the parts of this that maybe weren't word from the Selectmen's Handbook were from other towns, which were put forth by the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association meeting as appropriate things. So every single thing on this, none of this is made up by me. Every single bit of it is what is, I would say generally, the standard of conduct throughout the state. I equally, John, agree and I believe over the 8 or 9 years I've been a selectman have worked really, really hard to foster transparency. At the same time, that has to be balanced a little, but what are the rules and open meeting law, whether we like it or not, it really significantly handcuffs us. But I think I am very comfortable that over the years I've worked real hard at civility. I've worked real hard at transparency. And I believe these 10 things are things that we need to help continuing that. I absolutely welcome further discussion. If you think some of these, maybe we can discuss it at the next meeting, shouldn't be there, we certainly can discuss that. We'll probably have to let the people know who wrote the Selectmen's Handbook that they're out of order, at least by your way of thinking, John.
Well, for one, I'm surprised that civility keeps coming up as a word. I don't remember ever any of us in our meetings have a problem of being able to talk to each other. So that concerns me. You seem to be driving that we're not civil to each other. I don't see a need for this, quite frankly, since we all know the rules. And just, this feels like this feels like a problem that we're trying to solve when there's no problem.
Well, I'm going to, with great respect and humility, disagree. If we all agree, then these are the rules. If we don't agree, then I think we all need to know where we don't agree so we can move forward. I would strongly prefer not to be hearing that there's a vacuum in information sharing when actually we work so hard to make sure that
Well, we're going to talk about that.
All right. So, and actually, if there aren't any more comments on this, this can come up for discussion next time. Hopefully we can resolve it next time, because I'd like to move beyond how this discussion, I'd like to move beyond this discussion and move to just the work of government as quickly as possible. So any more comments on this before we move on to Mr. Trainer's part on the information sharing? Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Trainer.
So this is a continuation maybe of the same conversation. I think, Mark, one of the differences I see between you and I is that you're very concerned about the open meeting law. And when I see memos go that say, this is probably a gray area we need to look into, I think it's the shade of gray that you and I look at. You seem to think that most things shouldn't be maybe communicated without first checking in legal. So let me go into what I put on here a number of items on the agenda. But my idea was, in order to foster even more communication, especially to the public, was to have, much as the town administrator does her updates every agenda, or every meeting, I'm sorry, that there be a time for selectmen's updates. And these would not be agenda items where we're trying to solve an issue. It would be more to communicate what each of us is doing and maybe seeing around the town. And then if we say, well, that's got an issue with it, maybe then it becomes a future agenda item. So one of the things I do when I go around is I talk to some of the boards, like the Council on Aging. I always make up a note sheet and I say, this is what's going on. And I list the things that we publicly discussed. For instance, I sent you around the notes for the last Council on Aging where it talked about the marijuana cultivation, just a hodgepodge, everything we have talked about publicly. There was nothing on there that was private. So I'm looking to see something like that becomes every time we have a meeting, that we have a space for just communicating updates, not issues to be voted on. I think the library, we have a search committee for the library now for the new librarian. There's an update there, North Plympton Cemetery. I'm looking to legal to draft an agreement that we will have with the owner so we can maintain the North Plympton Cemetery. The Upland Club has offered their pavilion so that we can have the senior citizens have a fitness program there. You can't call it Zumba anymore because if you Zumba, you have to have a certification for. And the fitness director we presently have doesn't have that now. So they're calling it a low impact fitness program. I also have mentioned to Liz that I want to create a salary benefit sheet that becomes a standard format for us to look at so that over time we drive the benefits so that they're standardized across contracts as much as we can. So these are the kind of things I think we should be talking about at every agenda. Now, if somebody says, well, you know, nothing really went on that I was working on this week, that it was just the same things you've already heard, fine. We just pass over it. But I don't see that as an issue, and I don't see why we have to go to legal to talk about things we've already talked about. So I would like to see that included, and I've mentioned it to you all, and I guess I need some feedback.
Well, I'll stand by number 10 of the previous. Then the way we've done things in the past is between meetings. If we had information to share, we would share it with Liz. If there was information that we wanted to share among selectmen, it would be done by adding an agenda item. And I think that's what we've been doing. That's what I describe in number 10. I think maybe we're saying the exact same thing. So
No, we're not. What you're saying to me is, and I will do it, if I want to just do quick communications on things that have happened since the last meeting that are public, it's public when I go to Council on Aging, then I have to put an agenda in it. I'll do that. That's fine. We'll just increase the number of agenda items. I was just trying to make it easy. I wasn't looking for votes. I wasn't looking to create an issue. I was just saying, hey, here's things maybe you ought to know that are going on.
my understanding of the intent of the open meeting law is transparency. And my understanding is that a part of open meeting law, and particularly the agenda and putting items on the agenda which will be discussed, is offering then the public, the citizens of the town, the opportunity to comment. And I think that is what all of this is aimed at complete transparency and the opportunity for citizens to be part of it. So I
don't understand the difference.
If there are agenda items that you would like to discuss, I think they should be listed. It's as simple as that.
I just listed them.
You did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding too with the open meeting law, and it does tend to slow government down. But in the event someone did want to speak about something that you wanted to talk about, John, it would give them the opportunity to. And if we hadn't, it seems like we'd have to talk about these 2 weeks or for 2 meetings. You would introduce it, and then we could have to speak about it again the following week because people might be interested in participating in the discussion. I think that's when we're going to have a problem, is if you introduced something that wasn't on the agenda and someone wanted to participate in the discussion and they didn't have the opportunity to do it.
I don't know, maybe there's confusion. I'm suggesting it be on the agenda. All I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, put a line that says Selectmen's updates, and then below that, list all the things like I've done. I was just trying to make it clear that I wasn't pressing, by having it on the agenda, I wasn't pressing an issue that we had to take some action on. It was an update, much as Liz does with hers.
Gotcha. And I think it would have to be on the agenda. It
Yeah.
couldn't just be selectmen's updates with nothing underneath.
Right.
We would have to list what you wanted to talk about. Or if
Exactly.
anybody else wanted to talk about something. Okay, I got it.
I think in corporate America, when you have a department head meeting, that's usually how a department head meeting starts off, where everybody brings where they are, what they might be doing next, and it's just continuity. So all the departments, everybody knows what everybody's doing. I think that's what you're doing, John.
Yes, and as I've talked to legal about this, because the open meeting law was not driven by the state, wasn't driven by lawyers. It was driven by the newspapers, the media. And so the intent, I think, was absolutely the thing to do, to open up, make sure that the sun's shown in. But there are places where we can't communicate in executive, and Liz becomes the one that we're going to talk through. So we talk to Liz, Liz talks to you, Christine, you talk back to Liz, Liz talks to me. That's the piece of the open meeting law that didn't do what it was intended to do.
Well, John, I think that's because we're a 3-member board.
It was really not. The open meeting law was driven by the media, really not for towns like us under 10,000. It was driven for the Framinghams, the Bostons.
Mm-hmm.
They could care less about us. Anyways, let's have more discussion. We'll take it up again.
Okay. Next agenda item is cannabis proposal at Spring Street. So we have discussed this at the last 2 meetings. At our meeting last time, we had a list of questions. We asked for further edification from the people putting this together, and that information was shared. And so I am wondering if we might not be able to have a vote tonight. If we were, I think the motion would consist of agreeing to ask the people that are putting this together to begin negotiation with town council to make a municipal agreement. This commits us to nothing. There are many steps along the way. They have not purchased the property. They have not gone through all the permitting. We have not seen the details of what the buildings would look like. This is just an opportunity to give them a signal that we continue to be interested and that we continue to be interested enough to explore a municipal agreement through town council.
Well, I'm interested in exploring. I know there's still a lot of items that need to be answered. There's unanswered questions, but I think that, in my opinion, we should pursue this, pursue exploration.
So I guess I'm with you, Christine. I have a lot of questions. I haven't seen any financial information. I've tried to find out whatever information I could find on John White. I believe it's Port of Maine, Elizabeth. I think that's where nothing shows up in Google. It just concerns me a little, but like you say, it's the road down. I also want to see a plot plan of where this is, because if it's going to be an issue with the neighbors, I really don't want to get down that route. But if it's in fact in the industrial zone, that's the place it should be. It's just where it is in the industrial zone. And I think also, in fairness, we also have to at least talk to Hubble and Cisco to get some reaction from them. They're going to be neighbors. So if you want to go ahead, Mark, I'm willing to vote for it. I'm just telling you that I got a lot of questions.
Well, I think we all have a lot of questions. The good part of this one is exactly where it should be in the industrial zone, and I think totally has the potential to minimize any impact on residents, which is a key piece of this. So in any event, I make a motion that we let the principals involved in this, that we are interested in continuing to pursue this. We have a lot of questions, but we would be interested in the beginning of negotiation with town council.
I'll second the motion.
All right, any more discussion? Roll call, Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes. So Liz, will you be in touch with them and let them know where we are on that?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, next one is Area 58 Zoom issues. I have a couple of comments on this, but Mr. Trainer requested this item, so I don't know if he wants to make comments before me, and so I'll call on him.
I'm going to make comments, but I'll take whatever order you want to go in.
You go for it.
Okay. So we had, I guess probably, I have to go back a ways because I have been probably somewhat negative on the Area 58 operation right back to when I was moderator, when we changed over from Comcast to Area 58 and they couldn't provide the same service. But I want them to be successful. I really do, because I think it's the next step in the communications process. But I've also learned from being in business for a long time that to expect, you have to inspect. And I was very disappointed. You know, we had Richard Goulat, the executive director, in. Mark, you talked how you thought this was a significant success model. And I don't disagree in the idea of setting up that as a sharing among towns. What I do disagree is that operationally, it's a significant success. I would say it's probably mediocre at best. You mentioned that there had been operational glitches and a few stumbles. But then right after that, after he came in and said, hey, we can do X, X, and X, we had a hazard mitigation Zoom meeting set up for the public. And this was going to be the one that tied the Zoom into the TV so it could be broadcast at the same time. And I see that as a significant advance when they can do that. Well, it didn't go off. The Zoom piece was fine. They couldn't broadcast over the educational channel 15, which they indicated was they were going to do it. And they blamed it on Comcast, at least the person who was running from the Area 58 side. The next one right after it was when John Williamson had his meeting on school going back to full time. And this one upset me a little because this has been about as hot an issue in town as you could find over the last year. I mean, people have legitimate concerns on all sides. And he had to scramble and get a Zoom meeting going because Area 58, for whatever reason, didn't provide it. That 80 people attended. And I think we got to talk to Richard and say, look, what are you measured on? How are you measured? And we'd like to see how that's done monthly. Because again, I don't want to see them fail. I want to see them succeed. But they haven't. So that's where I'm coming from. I put it on the agenda because I think we need to talk to Richard again. I don't think this is an issue about whether Halifax or Carver or Plympton gets more or less time. It's about how they run the overall operation. And quite frankly, they get paid rather well.
John, so I appreciate you making the distinction between the success of shared services, which I vehemently stand before, and some operational difficulties along the way. So I appreciate that piece. There is no doubt that there have been some screw ups along the way. I did check with Rich about these two most recent screw ups. The first one, the hazard mitigation Zoom meeting, apparently a piece of equipment died that made it, that one not being successful. The second one, which was, I admit, a significant screw up, the special update for Dennett, and apparently the employee involved in taking care of that lost track of time. So I have checked with Rich on both of them. He apologizes profusely. I will at the same time say that we are, he was dealing with some new technology, a new level of the Zoom thing. I would go further to say, since I spend usually hours a day at Zoom meetings, there is hardly a day that goes by that there aren't screw ups on Zoom meetings in terms of freezing or links that didn't work or all the other things that happen along the way. Like everyone else, Area 58 is working under COVID situations, which makes it all the more challenging. I have been in touch with Rich about the two meetings that you specify. He fully understands the problem. He's working on them. The one other point that I have to make is Rich reports to the Board of Directors of Area 58, not to boards of selectmen. I'm mentioning all of this because I am a member of the Area 58 Board of Directors and I am Plympton's representative. The Board of Directors of Area 58 are fully aware of some of the things that happen along the way that aren't quite as good as they should be. And that board continues to push hard for things to improve. So the punchline is we're working on it.
Okay, but it has to be, the proof has to be in the pudding. We can't say nice words and then have failures. You know, I spent the last 25 years of my work career before I retired in technology. And God knows I know there can be screw ups, but that's why you inspect. That's why you say, if we ask you to do a Zoom meeting that's going to be on TV, you say, here's the parts that go into it that have to work, and you monitor them. It's no different than any other operation. I don't buy that technology per se is more complicated than other businesses.
John, that piece is totally incorrect. They are all about technology. The whole thing is technology. That's all Area 58 is all those pieces of technology that hold this together. And
I didn't say that they weren't. What I said is they have the same responsibility as another business. You know, one of my consultant arrangements was with a small biomedical company trying to create a cancer vaccine. I mean, that's about as complicated as I had ever seen. And I was coming out of technology that said, hey, you know, this is fairly complicated. So all I'm asking is, let's make sure that Area 58 gets the message that we want them measured and that we'd like to have them come back and feedback. I understand that the directors are the ones that they report to, but it's the residents of our town that have Comcast, not all residents, just the Comcast residents, who are paying $68,000 last year for the operation of this business.
we'll continue to work on it. And actually, I'll guarantee there will continue to be screw ups along the way. It's the nature of technology, but we'll continue to try to hold them to a high standard and make those screw ups as rare as possible.
John or Mark, maybe one of you can answer this. Is it our intent to go live with town meeting? Is that something? I didn't know if, that was part of the reason that you're concerned about this.
I didn't hear you clearly, Christine. What,
Is the plan that Area 58 is going to transmit town meeting live?
well, that's
I
one
think
of the
that-
things that they offered quite a while back.
The point being on that is the technology is being developed. Whether we
Okay.
do it or not is a totally separate question, but, and they're working on the technology, not quite
Well,
done.
my understanding is they've already done it in Carver.
I think they have along the way. Again, the point being technology there, possibility there, whether we should or not, I think each town would get to decide. We haven't had that discussion yet.
Okay.
And I'd like to think about that. There are some pros and cons along the way there. Not the least of which of technology getting in the way sometimes. And that's maybe in part one of the two mix-ups that happened along the way that John describes, was trying to deal with new technology. So I want to be very careful that we don't add complexity to an already complex operation.
Well, maybe they could do a selectmen's meeting and we could see how it works.
Yep.
Let's do that. That'd be great.
Okay, any more comments on this one? We move onward to town administrators update, including COVID-19.
So let's see here. I had a conversation today with the Carver Town Administrator, and we're looking at possibilities for some shared services, specifically as it relates to the animal control officer position. So hoping maybe we could put together some sort of agreement with them. Nothing for certain at this point in time, but if you recall, that position is currently vacant here in town. So it would be great if we could work out an arrangement, maybe an intermunicipal agreement or something to that effect that was beneficial for both communities. I'm working on putting together an inventory of all of our town-owned vehicles. I got information so far from police and fire, highway, and I'm trying to put it all into one spreadsheet, come up with almost like a numbering system for the vehicles so that if we have a conversation about new vehicles coming online or reducing the fleet or trading things in, that sort of discussion, that everybody knows which vehicles we're talking about. And we can actually see, like from a big picture perspective, what we own, as opposed to kind of piecemeal having to look at police separately and then fire, and then looking at the townhouse. So I expect to have that put together within the next week or so. And maybe we could put that on an upcoming meeting agenda and just kind of talk about what the plan is. For some of those vehicles and what you think that the plan should be. So I'm working on that. Our hazard mitigation planning grant, that's still moving forward. We expect that the project as a whole will be completed ideally sooner rather than later. It has a hard deadline of August. But they're moving right along. Our consultant on that is Woods Hole Group, and they're doing an excellent job kind of keeping things moving ahead. So once we're finished with that, we will have our own standalone hazard mitigation plan, as well as the materials to provide to Old Colony Planning Council for inclusion in the regional plan update that's being worked on. I was also back in touch with the vendor today, Energy Source, regarding our Green Communities grant. And it seems like we are going to be able to move forward with the weatherization project at the Dennett School. So they're pulling together all of the paperwork for that for us, the rebate forms for the utility companies and everything. And we also have still pending with that, replacing the thermostats at the old townhouse and getting those onto timers. So we're working on that project as well. And then otherwise, it's just been busy with traditional budget season and town meeting preparation type matters. myself and Barry, I mentioned at our last meeting that we made the arrangements with the audiovisual company for town meetings so that they could project and we could use the 2 rooms at Dennett. And then just in the last few days, I was in touch with Peter Veneto about using Dennett because if you recall, like the kids will all be back full time in the school that day of town meeting. And Peter was wonderful about it as usual and got his team on board. So everything is a go from the Dennett perspective as far as town meeting on May 12th. So that concludes my update on that.
Very good, thank you. Let's see. Correspondence, there are a couple items, Liz.
Sure. So the first one is just kind of a matter of routine as per 40A. FEMA and the state, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, are requiring us to complete an update to our zoning bylaw, specifically the section that relates to floodplains. And this is to incorporate some of their required changes and also to get the correct dates for all the updated FEMA maps. So our Conservation Commission and specifically Brian Veza, our conservation agent, he took the lead on this project and he and Linda Letty did a wonderful job making all of the changes that the state and FEMA are requiring. And we did circulate it back to the state official who's overseeing the project, and he has approved of the draft in its current form. So now as per 40A, you should vote to forward that to the planning board to commence the public hearing process that's required under 40A. And also, as far as sponsorship of the zoning bylaw change in the way of an article on the warrant, I would suggest that it's a joint sponsorship from Board of Selectmen and Conservation Commission. That would be my suggestion. So if you would like to take that vote to forward this to the planning board for public hearing and also to co-sponsor the article with the Conservation Commission, that would be appreciated.
So we should vote that tonight?
I would, yes, so that planning board can move forward with the public hearing process. They need to advertise.
So I would make a motion, as Liz suggests, that the zoning bylaw revision be forwarded to the planning board.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes. So Liz, why don't you toot your own horn on this other correspondence item?
I love talking about myself.
Great, go for it.
So I have received my official certificate from the Inspector General's office, and I am now a Massachusetts certified public purchasing official. So I'm very excited about that, and a lot of time went into that and some pretty in-depth courses as they relate to procurement. So I'm glad to have that under my belt and look forward to keeping up with the certification in the way of continuing education credits.
That's really a nice accomplishment. And actually, some of us that are a little bit old and been around for a while, you don't have to remember back so far that not only did we not have a procurement officer, as in truth, nobody knew anything about procurement. So it is great to have that expertise now. Congratulations. And I think I counted 6 more letters after your name. People that have PhDs were always a little irritated by that, is how long it took for 3, and now you have 6. But well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Liz. It's so good for the town to have your expertise in this matter, because it's real easy to get yourself in trouble with procurement if you don't follow the rules.
It is. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to kind of keep up with that's changing. So, you know, I'm not afraid to ask questions and continue with the education aspect. I did have one more update too that I forgot to include, just briefly. Halifax Council on Aging is going to be using the pantry at the townhouse to run the Meals on Wheels program for several weeks. They're having construction done at their location, and we had agreed quite some time ago, I want to say back before COVID was really a thing, allow them to use our facility. To date, they've been running the Meals on Wheels program out of there on our behalf for quite some time. So it almost seems fitting that we would send that option to them. So they'll be utilizing the pantry, and they are well versed with our COVID protocols. There won't be any overcrowding of the pantry or any problems that we can foresee. So they're all good to go on that.
Okay, thank you. So we have 3 things left: 1 minutes, 2 raves, and then looks like we're going to have time to at least briefly go through the parking lot. So let's get minutes out of the way. We have the minutes of March 8th to discuss any. I had no edits. Did John and Christine have a chance to take a look?
I had a couple edits, but I communicated them to Bree, so I'm not sure if she fixed those. I'm certain she did.
Okay.
I'm okay.
I did.
Thanks, Bree.
All right. So they're incorporated in the minutes you shared with us, Bree?
They were very minor. I believe it was the wrong address for Katie's. And then it was all little stuff like typos.
Okay. Then I make a motion the minutes be approved as edited.
All right. I'll second the motion.
Roll call, Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Trainer,
Yes.
Mr. Russo, yes. Okay, so that brings us to parking lot. We said we would end.
I would propose that to give parking lot its due, that we move it to the next meeting rather than break it up.
Just thinking about that. Okay, let's see how things go. We'll let it sit.
Mark, this is Ken. May I speak?
Sure.
I was listening with intent to the upcoming warrants that are proposed for the town buildings and other things. And I was surprised, extremely surprised at the lack of any apparent warrants from the bylaw review committee. And I refer to one that you are specifically aware of, where you and I and Liz talked about a couple of things several months ago, especially doing something on apartments and in-laws, with a secondary on kennels and a few others. And I heard nothing on the warrants update that seemed to be coming at all from the bylaw review committee. And we three, you and I and Liz, have agreed for several months now that these were important things for this meeting, including the not weekly, daily requests for information on apartments and in-laws and miscellaneous questions. And I believe there were assignments to the bylaw review committee. And based on what I heard tonight, given the timetable and the deadlines that I heard, I don't hear any expectation of anything from the bylaw review committee, especially the things that you and I and Liz talked about.
So I think there's probably a bigger discussion that might need an agenda item at another meeting. The thing I can tell you is it is my understanding that they are taking up consideration of a bylaw review in terms of the stuff you mentioned, but they're not ready yet for sure. They're complicated. Just to stick up a little for the bylaw review committee, they spend huge amounts of time on these information sheets, which should be implemented and utilized in the very near future, which are going to be a really great thing, I think, for the town and for making townspeople aware of bylaws and the need to consult bylaws and abide by bylaws. The in-law thing, as you well know, Ken, is incredibly complicated with lots of implications. And I know they've taken it up and I know they're working on it, but it isn't going to be this year.
Well, I would disagree with you, Mark, in the fact that brochures about enforcement was never in their charter. I would bring up that these one-pagers about explaining bylaws was never in their charter. It's bylaw review, it's bylaw writing, and from tonight's meeting, I have discerned that there is nothing coming from the bylaw review committee within the time frame that was stated, which is a week. And we spend every day fighting off questions about apartments, in-laws, kennels, and the things that you and I and Liz have talked about that are not seemingly going to occur. In fact, a statement was made by Alan several months ago that he predicted there would be no bylaw review, no bylaw changes this year from that committee. So I have to state that what the hell have they been doing for 6 months or a year?
Ken, I'm gonna ask you to stop at that point. I think this warrants discussion in terms of what the Board of Selectmen would like to direct the bylaw review committee to put attention in. Equally, I think we need input from the bylaw review committee of what they would like to put attention on. So I think this is an agenda item for a future meeting, and I certainly think this is an agenda item that if they want to join us, they should. So
well, they should, because Mark, as you know, you and I and Liz have had these conversations for 3 months now, and I hear nothing coming in a week left.
We get your point, Ken. We get your point. But I would say
I want to offer the opportunity for others to comment. Glad to put this on agenda for next time if you'd like.
I would like to see us put this on agenda on roles and responsibilities between the bylaws, the selectman, the zoning agent, and the town administrator. You know, it's worth a good, broad discussion. And I think we all want to be successful. We got to just make sure we're working at the same speed and on the same things.
Could we do this maybe an off meeting night rather
That'd be
than a
great.
Monday night? More
Yeah.
of a working meeting that maybe we could do this? Because
I think that's a great idea, Christine.
That this is just something that, because we've got so much regular business to do. I mean, this is extremely important, but it seems like will be a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, and a working meeting might make more sense.
I totally agree. I think that's a good suggestion. And I would just comment in kind of a broader perspective is we are trying to be a little careful now. We're coming up to town meeting in under 2 months. And I feel like we in general have a huge amount on our plates. Liz does, the Board of Selectmen do, and just want to be careful to kind of pick our battles and not take on more projects than we could handle.
I think though this one is very large. This one affects more people in town than almost any other project we're working on.
It does, and I totally agree. And I had I finished my sentence, it would be that, being that as it may, this is an important issue. So let's move forward with setting up a a time when we can have this discussion.
Okay. And the bylaw review committee has worked very hard, and I, don't want to slight them either, so we need to discuss this.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm going to slight them because in a year's worth of work, we have no warrants for this year.
Ken, I'm sorry, sir. I respectfully, we'll move forward at another meeting. Okay,
Perfect.
we're up to raves.
I'll go first. Beautiful weather. It's so nice to get outside, and I fired up my leaf blower for the first time since fall. And there's something about being outside that is just good for the soul, and yard work and sunshine. So yes, and I'm exhausted from spending the day outside with my leaf blower.
Well, I got a couple. I agree with you. The daffodils are poking up. And if you take a ride up 106 towards Halifax where the Great Wall is,
Yeah.
it's amazing. There are daffodils coming up. It's going to be spectacular. But my raves are, I got about two here. One is for Kathy Lenatra. She really worked well for us, I think. It turns out that one of the places that does vaccines in Kingston got a batch of 600 doses and wanted to make sure that the most vulnerable people in the towns that surrounded Kingston got it. Kathy notified us. We notified the fire department and the Council on Aging. And this past weekend, I believe 5 of our senior citizens were vaccinated. That would have
Myself included.
Well, you don't look that vulnerable, but okay.
Over 65.
The other one I'm pleased to say is I have this hero, Dave Batchelder, who's going back on the assessors at 91, I think, 90 and 91. So I've got a man I can shoot for as I age. So thank you, David. I really appreciate it. And the last one is, it was a joy to see the school buses pulling up this morning, this afternoon, to know that the classes are taken. I saw some people waiting for the kids to get off the bus. And it was just good to see a little bit of normality come back to us. So those are my raves.
So I'll end where I started with comity, courtesy and considerate behavior, particularly in government. So we will be back in 2 weeks, if not sooner. Very appreciative of everyone. We did it under 2 hours, and I'm grateful. See you soon. Please be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.